Hey, welcome to Journey Online. So glad you're watching with us today. Hey, summer's kicked in and we're ready to go. So jump in with this. I don't know if you ever had a nickname or ever got labeled as something when you were a kid. Lots of people do, and sometimes they just stick with you for life. There's labels on everything, in everything. Everything's got to have a label or a dozen labels. I've been looking at them this week. Let me show you a couple that I have found most interesting. How about this one? Big piece of machinery. It looks like it's something everybody ought to have at least one of. And here's the label, avoid death. Now see, up to this point, if you were using this machinery, you would have had no clue to avoid death. But now that you've read it, you're probably like, that is a good idea. Don't die while you're using this. You know why? Thank you label. That's what a label can do for you. Some labels are just that ridiculous. This is a speakerphone for your car. It's called a drive and talk. On the back, it has this label: never operate your speakerphone while driving. If you own a product called a drive and talk and you can't use it while you're driving, yeah, you may have come to the point where you said, this is a stupid label. Let me give you another one, because if we can find two, we can always find three. Here's one that'll help the slow of heart around here. This product may contain eggs. If you hadn't read that, you would have never had a clue that could have eggs in it. And I like the fact the word says may, not for sure. We've tested it, we've checked it, we've looked at it, we've inspected it. We feel like there's at least a possibility this product may contain eggs. That's just good thinking. Let me give you one more. It was my favorite of all of them. Do not hold the wrong end of a chainsaw. There is a product, a chainsaw, and on the chainsaw there is a label that says do not hold the wrong end of the chainsaw. What I loved about it is you can see the fingers flying off. That's just good, clean fun right there. By the way, let me say this. If you don't know which end of a chainsaw to grab, you do not need to be operating any kind of machinery. Matter of fact, you do not need to be operating. Labels are everywhere. Sometimes they're on products, sometimes they're on people, sometimes they're in the Bible. How about that for a transition? There are labels all through the Bible. There's one that drives me a little bit crazy, and it's what we want to talk about today, is a person who had this label attached to them. Let's read this in Hebrews chapter 11. It's kind of the Hall of Fame for people who were heroes in the Bible. It says this: it was by faith that Rahab, see if you can figure out the label attached to her, that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. This person named Rahab is given the label of what she does, like Joe the plumber, Bill the accountant, Rahab the prostitute. If you go old school and read old versions of the Bible, she was called Rahab the harlot. I'm not sure that this isn't an upgrade, but still, is that what you want attached to your name? There's a lot of places that it doesn't say that. It doesn't say everybody's name and then their occupation, but for her it does. Not just here, it does it a lot of places. It is a label that kind of stuck with her. Well, we're in a series right now called Everyday Heroes, and we're looking at people who are heroes. That's why she's in Hebrews chapter 11. She was a hero, but she's a hero that most people wouldn't think of on your list of heroes. If you said, here's top 10 heroes in the Bible, she's making no one's top 10 list, maybe because of her label. I don't know. Well, if you want to know about Rahab, this is a one-verse summary of hers. If you want to find out her whole story, you jump over to the book of Joshua. Joshua is a book that in the first chapter it starts out doing this. It is God choosing a leader named Joshua. The children of Israel have wandered around for years and decades, and now they're right on the border of going to the land that was promised to them. They choose a leader because Moses has died, and they choose Joshua. And God gives like this great pregame talk. He's like, Joshua, you are the man. I want you to be strong and courageous. I want you to lead and charge, and I am with you, and I'll bring you success. And if you'll follow me, we're going to kill this. It's going to be great. And he charges Joshua all up. The last half of Joshua 1 is Joshua giving the same pregame talk to all of his leaders and his people. He's got this huge crowd, and he's like, listen, God is with us. He is for us. We can trust him. We can follow him, and he is going to bring us the victory. And everybody's like, yes, yes. And then we turn the page to Joshua 2, and we find our friend with the label in that. This is where it starts. It says, then Joshua secretly sent out the 2 spies from the Israelite camp. His whole goal is to move into the promised land, but the promised land has a lot of people who don't want him there. There are a lot of enemies. So this is his first strategy. He instructed 2 of them to go scout out the land on the other side of the Jordan River, especially Jericho. So the 2 men set out and they came to the house. Just a weird transition. That's what's going on. They're going to go get this thing done. And they set out and came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab. There's our friend, there's her label, and they stayed there that night. On a list of 100 weird things that could go right after the big pep talk, God is with you, follow him, he's the man, you the man, we can do it, this is going to be great. The next page says, so he sent out 2 spies and they went to Jericho and stayed at a prostitute's house. That is not the most likely phrase that you would have expected. These 2 guys were sent out as spies. I don't know what it takes to be a good spy, but I do know what it takes to be a bad spy. These guys had that quality. They're supposed to go do recon and check out everything around Jericho. They go to Jericho, go in through the gates. We find out later that one of the first places inside the gate was the house of the always open door for people to come in and say hello. That was Rahab's house. She had a welcome sign in the window. Maybe we could say it that way. And as she welcomed them, it brings about all of these questions. One of the things we're going to find out in just a second is that she recognized them as spies. That would be one of the qualities that would make you a bad spy. We're also going to find out that other people noticed them going in and thought they were spies as well. Okay, let's just get to the bottom line. If you are a spy and everybody knows you as a spy, you are not a very good spy. If you want to write that down, you can. Put that in your notes on your phone in case you ever need to know. There you go. Well, that's what happened to them. They end up at her house. They end up with other people noticing. And as the story goes, we have to ask this question. She chose to help these men. Why? Why would she risk her life? She didn't just say, hey, get out of here. I know who you are. Get out of here. You're going to get us both killed. Get out of here. She didn't go, hey, me, Rahab. Rahab the prostitute. That's me, yeah. Hey, there's spies here. Arrest them. She didn't do any of that. As a matter of fact, she hid them. What would have made this woman risk her life for these men? And she did. What was it in her? What was it going on in her mind? What was it that was affecting her that would lead her to do that? And I just want to give you this before we go any further. There are times in every person's life where God wants them to take a step of faith. Even if you're not a person of faith, I believe that God comes to every person and invites them into something in relationship with him. I'll tell you the way I look at it. I've got a little dog. He's a Yorkie. He's about this big. His name is Baxter. Baxter jumps around on everything. He'll jump from the floor to the ottoman to the sofa to the back of the sofa to the arm of the sofa over to the love seat. That's kind of how he operates. He bounces around a lot. Sometimes he knows I don't like that when he lands on me, because he could land on your shoulder, on your chest. He just likes being near people. And so sometimes when he's bouncing all around, he'll stop when he gets to one of those, the ottoman in front of me or the sofa arm over here. He'll stop and look at me before he jumps. And I'll go, come on. And he'll just give me that look. And then I'll go like this. Come on over here. Come on. And then he jumps. And then it's on. He's going to lick, bite, do whatever he does that he thinks is fun. He waits for this. I believe in every person's life there are opportunities. I know this sounds weird, but many of you will relate to this, where God says, come on. I want you. Bring it on. This is what I have for you. I think this is a moment where this woman, Rahab the labeled, where God says to her, I'm choosing you. Come on. Here's the way that kind of plays out. She took them upstairs and hid them. Well, if we keep reading the verses that follow, the people in the city recognize them, and right at dark, they come to her house and say, we saw 2 spies that came in here. Where are they? And she immediately says, oh yeah, they were here, but they just asked me a few questions and left. I think they went out of the gate right before it closed for the evening. If you wanted to find them, I think you'd have to go chase them down. They went that way. And so the guys that were looking for them, they all go that way. She took a huge risk on their behalf. And then that evening, before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof to talk with them. And her statements are incredible. She said, I know the Lord has given you this land. We are all afraid of you. Everyone in the land is living in terror. She says, I know who you are. I know who you serve. And we're scared of your God. Like, we feel like this is not a good thing for us. As a matter of fact, she explains it a little bit more. For we've heard of how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. We heard the stories. It's gotten out. It was on TMZ, or we read it online. It was in a reel. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of all the heavens, above and below the earth. We believe... She's saying, listen, I know who you are, but even more, I know who your God is. And this is the crazy thing. I believe he's really who he says he is. Like, this is a faith moment for her. She's not saying, I read a story. She's going, I believe your God is the real deal and that he has sent you here. Let me just say this. Everybody in town was buying into these being dangerous people. But none of them acted on it. Her faith took her to a next step, and the next step was action. Her action was she goes up and talks to these guys and said, I believe that you are who you say you are, that your God is who he says he is. I believe this is the real deal. And then she changes her strategy. She said, I believe that I have saved you already. I've lied for you. Now swear to me by the Lord that you'll be kind to me and to my family since I've helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live along with my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all their families. She said, listen, I have helped you. Now I want to, she's like brokering a deal. She said, listen, I did this, now you do this. I believe your God is the God. I am accepting him as the supreme God of the universe. Now help me. I helped you. Will you now help me? It's weird. She even chose a word. She said, will you be kind to me? What a weird word. Is that really what she's wanting? When I hear be kind to me, I'm like, hey, nice shoes. Be kind to me. Hey, don't call me names. Yeah, could you keep your voice down? Be kind to me. I don't know what kind is to everybody, but it doesn't seem like she's asking for kindness. It seems like she's asking for help. It's interesting, the Hebrew word that we find here that turns out to be the word kind is the word hesed, H-E-S-E-D. It literally means a covering. It's like more than just I'll do something kind. It is to be completely covered in kindness, loving kindness it's often called. Matter of fact, in the New Testament, it lands on the word grace. I'm not asking for you not to be mean, not to point fingers, not to call me a prostitute. I am asking for, maybe a better picture of it would be this way. I'm asking for your kindness to cover my family, to protect us, to be our covering, a hesed. Actually, maybe that's not the best picture. Maybe it's more like this. I'm asking for the kindness of you and your God to envelop, to surround, to protect, to be that bubble around me, to be my life, to be my future, to be my safety. She wasn't saying, hey, could you be kind? Don't be mean. She's saying, listen, I need huge help. When the guys hear this, this is their response. We offer our own lives as a guarantee for your safety. The men agreed. If you don't betray us, we'll keep our promise and we'll be, and they throw the same word right back at her, we will envelop you in our protection, in our kindness, in our goodness. Our God will envelop you with his grace. When the Lord gives us the land, They said, yeah, not just yeah, heck yeah. Exactly. You've helped us. If you'll keep us safe, done deal. What a beautiful picture of all the things that are going on in her world. Then, since Rahab's house was built into the town wall, this is how it finishes up, she let them down by a rope through a window. So, big wall, house built into it, big wall, not wall, wall. Her house is built in it. She lets them down by this rope so they can leave. She tells them, hey, go that direction for about 3 days, hide out till these guys get back who are looking for you, then go back to your people. You'll be safe then. I know how this works. So she says all that. She let them down through the window. She sent them on their way, leaving the scarlet rope hanging from the window. It's an important little piece. Part of their deal also was when you come back, when Jericho is going to fall, leave this rope out there so we can identify you, not just us, but our whole army can identify where you and your family are. It'll be your identifying mark, is that scarlet rope. So she left it hanging there. So these guys go back, the spies who everybody noticed. They finally make it back and they tell Joshua and all the leaders, Jericho is ripe for the taking. They're scared to death of us. We believe that God will take this city. So Joshua goes back to God and God gives him directions, and they're weird directions. If you grew up going to church, you know the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. If you haven't ever been to church before, it's not hard to figure out. God gave them these weird directions. He said, hey, line up, and he told them just how to do everything. I want you to walk around the city once a day for 6 days. Just walk around. All the people up on the walls are watching. They're like, what are these morons doing? Why are we scared of them? They just play some music and walk. I mean, it's like mall walkers. I don't know if you're brave enough to go to a mall these days. Whatever they are, whatever you're doing, that was their job. Then on the seventh day, he told them to go around 7 times and everything to do. And when they did, the walls of Jericho crushed, came falling down. All the people were killed, all except for one place, the place where the scarlet rope was hanging. Matter of fact, if you skip forward from chapter 2 to chapter 6, it says this, so Joshua spared Rahab, not just Rahab the labeled, and her relatives who were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies Joshua sent to Jericho. And then there's this great phrase at the end of that, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. You know what they didn't do? They didn't say, hey, thanks for the help, see ya. May you be warm and filled. Go away now. You did your thing, we do our thing. Go away, prostitute girl and your family. You go do. No, you know what they did? They covered her with their kindness. They enveloped her with their protection. She became one of them, part of their family. Chosen by them, not just added on because they had to. It's an incredible story of grace. It's an incredible story of family. It's an incredible story of loving kindness that is bigger than just not being mean. It is incredibly God-driven in how it plays out. It's not really the end of Rahab's story. As a matter of fact, it's just the beginning. I'll just say this, I don't even think it's the best part of her story. It's just the most detailed part. But if you keep reading about Rahab, there are a lot of other things that happened to her, but all of them were sparked by one thing, her faith. Her faith that she took a risk because she believed that God was who he said he was, so she did things that required his goodness to get her through. And here's the bottom line. If you're going to be an everyday hero, if you're going to be a hero, if you're going to be a Christ follower, here's the truth. Faith that costs nothing or risk nothing, well, it isn't really faith. What she did, she hadn't done anything great before this. She was still known as Rahab the prostitute. She just placed her trust in something bigger than what she had known before. And because she did, her natural reaction was to act like somebody with faith. And she did exactly what her next right step was to hide those guys and send them out. And then her next right step was to gather her family. And then her next right step was to pray that they would show up and keep their word. And just as God always does, they did. Her faith was high risk. Hey, can I just say this in passing and then we'll wrap up our little Rahab story? Can I just say this? If your faith never cost you anything, if your faith never pushed you to a point of risk where you go, but what if God doesn't show up in this? Can I just say this? Then you're not exercising faith. You can call it faith. You can call it something. But faith always costs, and faith always comes with a risk. It always does. The scary part is for people, some who go to church, some who watch Christian videos, some who read Christian books, some who've done it for years or decades of their life, and you're committed to that. If I ask you this question, what would you do with it? When was the last time your faith caused you to risk something? When was the last time your faith cost you something? You go, well, mine just hasn't played out that way. I'm just telling you, then it's not faith. God never leaves us in a place that we don't require His capacity to see us through. He will constantly stretch our muscles to make us lean on Him. That is why we're here. That's how He builds our character. Sometimes it means you're going to have to risk doing something that outside of God you think will fail, and it scares you. Sometimes it means I'm going to enter into a relationship with some people that aren't the ones that make me most comfortable, but I'm doing it for a reason because I need to share my faith. Sometimes it'll mean I need to end a relationship with someone and I've become so dependent on them, I'm not sure I can, but you know deep in your heart that your next right thing to do is build some distance or boundaries in there. Sometimes it means I'm going to invest in something financially. I'm going to give to something. I'm going to be generous with my time, and you're like, but I don't know if I have enough time, and I don't know how people are going to respond, and what if people don't like me? What if I don't like it? There's all these risks involved. Sometimes it means I'm going to tell the truth in something, that if I don't say anything, it would be a lot easier for me, but I'm going to live like a man or woman of character. I don't know what it is, but faith always comes with cost, and if there's no risk ever involved, then it's really not faith. Well, for her faith changed everything. Rahab's faith, here you go, here's a little list. It changed her life. Like, she went from Rahab, the person living at the end of by the gate in the wall, as the prostitute, as the Gentile that lived in a walled city, to the woman who was completely enveloped by God's followers and by God, by God's people. It changed her life. It changed her residence, her location, her return address on her mail. She had to get new cell service. Everything changed. It changed her life. Not only that, it changed her future. I don't know what she thought her future was. As the aging prostitute, I don't know what that looks like when you think about, what do I do 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? I don't know what she thought that was going to play out like, but I'm telling you, she never dreamed it would play out like her future did. The Bible gives us some little insights into her future. It's really quite amazing. I don't know who came before her. I don't know what her mother's name was, or grandmother or grandfather, but I do know the other end of her story. It changed her legacy. Here's what we find out, that as Rahab traveled with the children of Israel, there came a time where she met a man, and he wasn't just anybody. He was actually a pretty influential man, pretty well-off man, a man of considerable wealth. As a matter of fact, his name is Salmon. I know it sounds a little fishy. Salmon, S-A-L-M-O-N. She met Salmon, and Salmon fell madly in love with her, and she did with him, and they got married. Salmon is a guy who invested his time and money and his influence, and he's actually the founder of a city that maybe you've heard of. It's called Bethlehem. He was the founder of the city of Bethlehem, the little place where Jesus was born, that one. That's who she married. And they fell madly in love and got married, and they had a son, and the son's name was Boaz. Boaz is this wonderful story because he met this most beautiful woman named Ruth and married her. You're going to probably hear about that around here in the near future. One of the most incredible love stories in the history of love stories, Boaz and Ruth and all that God did through them. Well, that's her son and daughter-in-law, Rahab. Yeah, that one. Think that's what her plans were? You think she could even dream that? The founder of Bethlehem's wife? And then Boaz and Ruth had a son, and his name was Obed. And Obed fell in love and got married, and Obed had a son. You know what his name was? His name was David. He's the King David, the man after God's own heart, the great-great-grandson of our friend Rahab. You think her faith changed anything in her life, in her future, in her legacy? You think the stories that were told about her were just, yeah, she used to be a prostitute, or hey, she used to live in Jericho, or hey, she helped some guys? That wasn't even a big part of her story. It was just a beginning part of her story. Honestly, it begins to go to the background a little bit. She outlived her label, is the truth. But that's still not the best part of her story. I don't believe it's the best part, and I don't believe it's the most interesting part. Because she changed her life, she changed her future, she changed her legacy. And then there's a verse I want you to see, and it's just a weird verse. It's in Matthew 1. It's kind of the genealogy of Jesus. It goes way back, and it just lists names. Back in the old school, when I was reading it, back when I was a kid, they used the word begat, and so begat them, and so begat. In other words, they gave birth to. I don't know, a lot of begatting going on back in those days. But it just gives this list of people. I just want to show you this one. It's what I already mentioned to you. Salmon was the father of Boaz, and Boaz, it goes on later to say, was the father of Obed, and Obed the father of David, King David. And then if you just keep reading, there's a bunch more generations. David was the father, then the next. And then not too long from there it says, and there was Jesus. The great grandmother of the Savior of the world, of the Messiah, Rahab. That's not the best part of the story. The best part of the story to me is, for the first time in Scripture, Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. It's not what's there. It's what's not there that matters. The mother was Rahab, not Rahab the prostitute. What changed in her life, her future, her legacy, what changed most was her label. Now she's the great grandmother of Jesus. What an incredible story. Let me just say this. If I were building my story, if I were Jesus, if I were God, and I said, I'm going to plan out everything. You know when you're in school and they do the little court or the little schoolyard pick teams for whatever back in the day, like dodgeball. You want to pick the guy who can throw hard, the guy who can catch. If I could pick my own team, I usually pick people who wouldn't get out first because that's sort of the object of the game. If you could pick your own team for who you're going to put in your lineage, in your legacy, in your outcome, you would pick the home runs. You'd say, oh, and them, and they were amazing, and they were amazing, and then me. Wow. God could pick anybody He want. He didn't have any leftovers. He didn't have any have-tos. He didn't have any last picks. And you know who He picked? He picked Rahab. He said, she's the one I want. She's the one I want in my son's legacy. She's the one I want to be remembered by. What kind of God does that? And by the way, He's the one who envelops people who are broken with His love and His forgiveness and His hope. That kind of God. So I finished like a couple weeks I've been thinking about. I love the story of Rahab, so it was easy to get ready for. Been thinking about it, writing stuff, getting ready for this talk, and I kind of finished it a few days ago. And I was just thinking, when I was growing up, we used to go to church a lot, and at church there was a saying. I don't think I said it because I was a kid, but I just remember other people saying it. I don't think it's probably a bad saying. I've never thought of it as a bad thing, but people would say this. Maybe you've heard it. But there, by the grace of God, go I. I mean, it's a little Yoda-like, but the point being, man, look at those poor people, and if it weren't for God's grace, I could have ended up like them. I've been reading the story of Rahab, and I've just kind of thought, man, I'm pretty blessed. But there, by the grace of God, go I, man. If it weren't for God's grace, I could have ended up one of her, like her. And then as I was reading through this and watching, it finally occurred to me how arrogant I must be to think that God's forgiveness for her was greater than God's forgiveness for me. I could have ended up like her. I am like her, broken. She wasn't one of those people. She is one of us people. Broken, sinful, in need of a Savior. Oh, those people. Me. The Bible says the thing that will keep us furthest from God is our pride. And how freaking arrogant do you have to be to go, well, at least I didn't have to get His forgiveness like she did. Are you crazy? Am I nuts? That's exactly what God did. The reason He gave His life was because of my sins. My sins make me broken. The price or the payment of sin is death. The reason He died is because of sins just like mine. Mine were no less or no greater. Broken is just broken. The problem is when you feel like those people's sins are big and yours are small, we lose our wonder in what God has done for us. And if you lose your wonder in what God's done for us, you're pretty much done growing. To wake up every day and say, why would anybody put me in their lineage? Why would anybody surround me with their love, their grace, their forgiveness? Why would anybody do that? I don't know, but I'm so glad He did. That's what motivates us to live the life we're supposed to live. If you're going to be an everyday hero, you have to wake up every day in awe of what God has done and willing to risk whatever the next right thing for you to do is. And when you do, God will change your life. He'll change your future. He'll change your legacy. And He'll even change your labels. And that's a God worth following, don't you think? So God, help us live like people who have been surrounded by the bubble of Your love, Your forgiveness, Your grace. Help us live grateful, we ask in Your name. Amen. Hey, thanks for watching.